name is Marija and I'm a gaming industry executive. I'm here today to talk to you about video games, about what they are, what they aren't, and what they could be for you. Also, I would like to talk about the most common stereotypes surrounding video games and gaming industry in general, try to put them into a context for you, and finally break them. How many of you play video games? Can I see some hands? Okay, a lot. I like that. Okay, cool. Well, I've been playing video games since a very young age. And actually, when I started playing video games, the most popular consoles back then were Sega and Nintendo. And the main fun for me and my younger brother was renting those consoles every weekend. And you know, when you wake up very early in the morning on a Saturday morning, for example, expecting that he's not up yet and that I'm going to be first there, and then I come to the console and see him already playing for a while, and I have to wait for my turn. That was not fun. But yeah, for many years I've been playing various types of video games, and throughout the years then there were PC games, and finally nowadays it's mobile games, at least for me, because this is what I do. And like I've just explained, I'm a gamer all my life. Do I look like a typical gamer to you? Yes. Okay, you broke the rest of my speech right now. For most people, honestly, I don't, because I'm not a boy. Obviously, I'm not a young teenage boy. And that's the most common stereotype, actually, that, for example, video games are for kids, and that most of the players of video games are teenage boys. And when we imagine an average gamer, it goes somewhere like this. He's sitting in a very dark room, playing games for 20 hours a day, barely eats or sleeps, has no real connection to the external world, and his only world is that video game he plays. Is that correct? Well, what if I tell you that's not the truth, actually? I mean, the average age of a gamer nowadays, and that's what the statistics says, is that he or she is 35 years old in average. That means that the games are mainly for adults. It doesn't mean that kids don't play games. They play them because video games are now mainstream. They are part of a pop culture. And of course, that young kids play video games. But the main market for video games are not kids. The most popular franchises in the world are making games with the rating 18+, which also means that video games are made for adults. Also, another very common stereotype is that women or girls, female, don't play video games. What if I tell you that also official statistics says that almost half of all players in the world are female? For example, only in US, that percentage is 46. 46% of all players in US are girls. Surprising fact. That tells us that the demographics of an average video game player is actually changed throughout the years a lot. When I started playing video games, those games were pretty basic. They could also trigger pretty basic emotions at people. Nowadays, a lot has changed. Most of the games are very complex, with various layers of influence, and I will talk about that a bit later. Also, the next very common stereotype is when parents talk to their kids, don't play games, you'll become addicted to them. And that's not very far from truth if not handled with care, that can happen. And several years ago, actually, the World Health Organization introduced the term gaming disorder. That way, they approved that there is actual disorder which you can get by playing video games. But that's discouraging, yeah. But the encouraging fact is that only 3% of players get this disorder. And if we compare this to some other sources of fun, so to speak, that we are consuming on a daily basis, for example, let's take alcohol. I'm not saying that we are consuming it on a daily basis, but I mean, it's pretty much regulated thing. We never talk, you never hear that anyone is talking about how addictive it is, and we all know it. Of course, it's normal, we know it. But on the other hand, alcohol is part of many cultures. It's kind of normal thing nowadays. And what if I tell you that the official statistics says that 6% of alcohol consumers get addicted? And when we compare that to video games, what does that tell us? They're not that dangerous. What is really important is that we have this control over the content that we are using. Of course, that if we try to abuse any kind of thing that we are using for fun, that we are eventually get into trouble. But if we have control over what we are doing, that's not going to happen. Video games are the biggest entertainment industry in the world. In terms of revenue, it is bigger than movies and music industry combined. Not sure if you knew that. Yeah, that's true. So, as the primary source of fun being video games, one can think that there are no other purposes, but there are plenty of them. For example, video games can be used as the learning platform. There are also very entertaining games. By playing them, you can learn a lot about history, geography, politics, economics, etc. Also, video games are great for training some skills, such as focus. If you cannot focus yourself on a simple task or on listening to a lecture more than 5 minutes, maybe you should try playing video game, because it will teach you how to get focused, to complete the task that you have inside the game, and get your reward eventually. Also, I've read, by preparing for this lecture, I've read a research saying that playing video games is great for children with dyslexia. And it's also connected to this focus story, because by playing particular games, they can learn how to focus and how to learn to read. Apart from that, video games are great media for art, culture, combining many aspects all in one. And if we talk about parents who are afraid that their kids are become addicts or that they are wasting their time by playing video games, apart from that, it can bring them to a great career path, like it did with myself. It is important that they understand that video games are nowadays really important part of children's lives. It's a mainstream, like movies are not mainstream anymore. Now it's series, and now it's music, and video games are in that group as well. So I guess it is important for us to understand what our kids want and like to do. And if you still are not convinced that video games are great and why you should try them, if you still think that you don't like video games, it only means that you didn't find appropriate one for you yet. Thank you.